Ben size öncelikle akışı arz edeyim. İstiklal Marşı ve saygı duruşundan sonra Sayın Rektörümüzün bir konuşması olacak. Kendisi online olarak bağlanmış olacak bize. Ben hemen hızlı bir şekilde ekran paylaşımıyla birlikte bunu gerçekleştirmiş olayım. Evet, teşekkür ediyoruz. Afişimiz Kocaeli Üniversitemizin kısa bir tanıtım filmiyle devam edecek. Hemen onu paylaşımını
This is Kocaeli University, the shining education of Kocaeli, Turkey's industrial capital. Established in 1992, our university quickly became one of Turkey's large and strong universities and is working for our future both in education and science. With 840 education programs in associate, undergraduate, and graduate degrees in the fields of health, science, engineering, and social sciences, our university shed light on the future of more than 60,000 students. We are aware of our responsibility. With our expert academic and support staff, we stand by our students to ensure they receive the best education. We act with a proactive approach that aligns with the requirements of the era, regularly updating our strong infrastructure on which our educational services are based. Primarily in Umuttepe, which is one of the most prominent campuses in Turkey, we provide comfortable classrooms and study environments for our students in all educational areas of the university. With our advanced library services, we pave the way for our students and researchers to access information. We offer our students the privilege of being a member of Kocaeli University with advanced laboratory and application facilities where they can test their theoretical knowledge with practice. Aware of the importance of internationalization in contemporary university education, our university is strengthening opportunities for international education and research day by day, with the aim of becoming a global brand in education. Through bilateral agreements, especially Erasmus, we provide opportunities for both our researchers and students to gain international experience. We develop international quality standards, accreditation, and collaborations with the awareness that university education should be modern and universally recognized. Thus, we become a preferred university for foreign students seeking education in Turkey. In addition to educating the qualified workforce our country needs, we produce science for our country through research, R&D activities, and collaborations. With our research centers and technopark, we carry out projects and develop technologies in areas needed for the development of our country. As a brand value of an industrial city, we offer the science we produce to the service of the industry. Through our bilateral agreements, we support production and stand alongside particular brands. We both carry out R&D studies demanded by our industry and provide internship opportunities for our students to enhance their experiences. With the honor of carrying the name of our city, we develop projects that align with the needs of our city and region and stand by our people with all our facilities. With our research and application hospital, which is one of the most modern infrastructures in Turkey, we make a difference in healthcare services and provide quality healthcare not only for the local community, but also for our country. We care about the happiness of our students. In Kocaeli, it stands out with its tourism opportunities and city life, besides being known as an industrial city. We provide our students with the social facilities they desire and need. With the approach that a happy student is a successful student, we act with the awareness that academic success will not be limited only to the quality of education. With more than 100 student clubs, indoor and outdoor sports facilities, swimming pool, social living areas, dining halls, health services, sports and cultural activities, we're always working together to feel that we're always there for them. The 21st century is the age of technology, science, and change. We are aware of our responsibility. We work for the success of our students and for the future of science. Altogether, we educate, research, and produce.
Okay, thank you so much. Şu anda rektörümüzün konuşmasıyla devam edeceğiz. We are going on our rector's speech.
Sayın Rektörüm, 13.sünü yaptığımız bu Marmara Fen ve Sosyal Bilimler Kongremize her koşulda destek verdiniz. Ben çok uzatmadan koşullarınızı da biliyorum. Sözü size veriyorum hocam. Buyurun.
Aynı zamanda toplumların gelişimine de yön verecek fikirleri dönüştürecektir. Bugün burada sunulacak bildiriler ve yapılacak tartışmalar, geleceğin bilimsel ve sosyal yapılarının şekillenmesine önemli rol oynayacaktır. Bu tür bilimsel etkinliklerin sadece bilgi alışverişi sağlamakla kalmayıp aynı zamanda üniversiteler arasında işbirliklerinin güçlenmesine, networklerin artmasına katkı sunduğunu biliyoruz. Bunu unutmamamız gerekiyor. Birlikte daha güçlü, birlikte daha etkili, birlikte daha yenilikçi olabiliriz. Kocaeli Üniversitesi olarak bizler de bu işbirliklerini ve ortak çalışmaları her zaman desteklemekte ve ileriye taşımak amacıyla çalışmaktayız. Aday Araştırma Üniversitesi olarak misyonumuzun önemli bir parçası da bu yeni ayrıca sürdürülebilir proje işbirlikleridir. Son olarak kongremizin düzenlenmesinde emeği geçen herkese teşekkür ediyorum. Katılımlarınızdan dolayı sizlere çok teşekkür ediyorum. Katılımlarıyla bizlere güç veren değerli akademisyenlerimize, öğrencilerimize başarılar diliyorum. Hep birlikte teknolojinin faydalarından çok daha fazla erişimle yararlanabildiğimiz bir geleceğe doğru ilerlemek dileğiyle kongremizin bilim dünyamıza önemli katkılar sağlamasını temenni ediyor. Hepinizi saygıyla, sevgiyle selamlıyorum.
Hocam çok teşekkür ederiz katılımınız için. Biz devam edelim. Çok sağ olun hocam. Çok teşekkürler. Biz bugün 21 farklı ülkeden katılımıyla 216 bildirimiz var. 900'e yakın katılımcının iştirak ettiği bir kongre gerçekleştireceğiz. Her zaman değişmeyen bazı kavramlarımız var. Bunun sürdürülebilirlik, bunu çok önemsiyoruz. Zaten 13.sü yapılması kendi başına da sürdürülebilir olduğunu gösteriyor. İnşallah 13 değil 133 olur. Bu şekilde devam eder. Bizden sonra da başarılı bir şekilde kurumsallaşarak devam eder. Ben yurt içinden, yurt dışından tüm katılımcılara bu bilim alanlarımıza verdikleri katkılardan dolayı çok teşekkür ediyorum. Fedakarca çalışan kongredeki yakın çalışma arkadaşlarımıza emekleri için de teşekkür ediyorum. Başarılar diliyorum ve sözü Arif Bey'e bırakıyorum.
Şimdi online katılımlar hepimiz için zor oluyor aslında. Öncelikle geldiğiniz için teşekkür ederiz. Biz burada Özgün Hocam'ın da, Rektör Hocamızın da bahsettiği gibi aslına bakarsanız 900'ün üzerinde katılımcımızın olması gerekiyor. Ama malum şartlardan sonra biraz online katılımlar çok fazla arttı. Biz akademide, bilim dünyasında aslında hep beraber bir araya gelip çok daha iyi şeyler başarabileceğimizi düşünüyoruz. Buna yönelik olarak da bu süreçlere katkı veren başta Rektör Hocamız olmak üzere tüm hocalarımıza ayrı ayrı teşekkür ediyorum. Artı katılımcılarımıza, yurt dışından da katılımcılarımız var aramızda. Az sonra sunumunu da yapacak. Aynı şekilde bekliyor. Luis hocamız var Portekiz'de. Şimdi onun da benim kendimde özelinde bir kısmı var. Yurt dışında ben çalışırken Luis Hoca ile birlikte çalışmıştık biz. Dolayısıyla benim üstümde emeği olan kişilerden bir tanesi. Az sonra zaten kendisine de teşekkür edeceğim. Şimdi tabii online katılımlar çok fazla sayıda olduğu için biz açılış kısmını da normal herkesin katıldığı şekilde yapamıyoruz takdir edersiniz. Çünkü oradaki başlangıç kısımları biraz daha sığ geçiyor. Ama tersten gitmiş olalım en azından. Kendimizi tanıtarak başlayalım. Ben Profesör Doktor Arif Özkan, Kocaeli Üniversitesi Sürekli Eğitim Merkezi Müdürüyüm. Aynı zamanda Imascon Kongresi'nde de Özgün Hocamızla birlikte çalışan ekipten bir kişiyim. Bu çalışmalar esnasında da biz Kocaeli Üniversitesi olarak aslında sürdürülebilirliği her zaman her şeyin üstüne tuttuk. Çünkü bu kişiye bağlı olmadan akademik çalışmalarda bizim sahaya verdiğimiz katkılarda sürdürülebilir olsun şeklinde yola çıktığımız bir konu vardı. Burada da 13.sünü düzenlemek bir sempozyumun, kongrenin aslında çok kolay bir şey değil. Sizlerin vereceği katkılar burada en önemli etkenler oluyor. Dolayısıyla bunun niteliğinin artması, sürdürülebilirliğin artmasıyla doğru orantıda gelişen bir içerik olarak ortaya çıkıyor. Biz öğrencilerimizle de inşallah bundan sonraki süreçte daha etken, daha katılımcı bir şekilde bunu daha nitelikli sürdürülebilir hale getirmiş oluruz. Özgün Hocam'ın da dediği gibi aslına bakarsanız ciddi sayıda katılımcının olduğu bir kongreden bahsediyoruz. Burada online oturumlarda da ciddi konular görüşülecek. Özellikle öğleden sonra başlayan yüz yüze oturumlar ve aynı şekilde paralel olarak devam edecek online oturumlarda yurt dışından da gene katılımcılarımız var. Onların sunacakları bildirilere, kendi alanınızdaki ilgi duyabileceğiniz içeriklere de katılım sağlarsanız ve bundan sonraki süreçte de burada olmayıp da daha sonra bundan faydalanmak isteyen kişilere de bizim üniversitemizin ve Imascon'un sitesindeki online oturumların kayıtlarında izlenmesini sağlarsanız biz ayrıca memnun olacağız. Çünkü bu paylaşımla devam edecek olan bir süreç. Bu paylaşımı da daha aktif hale getirmemiz, bu paylaşım süreçlerinde daha aktif olarak kullanmamız lazım. Çünkü bilgi az önce de hocamın dediği gibi burada kalmasın, herkesin artarak devam ettirdiği ve kullanılabilir bir bilgi haline gelmesi gerekiyor. Yani demek istediğim kongreden sonra da aslında devam eden bir süreç var. Bu kayıtların da herkes tarafından izlenmesi bilim dünyasına, akademiye ve bizim de aynı şekilde beraber çalışan akademisyenlerimiz de yine fırsatlar ortaya koyması açısından da belki bir işbirliği doğacak, belki başka kişilerin de işbirliği çalışmalarıyla daha düzgün bir şekilde olacak bir hale gelecek. Ben izin verirseniz katılımcılarımızdan aramızda olan arkadaşımıza teşekkür etmek istiyorum. I would like to thank to Mr. Dan from Anglo-Ruskin University, United Kingdom. He has a speech for our Congress in opening session, and also the microphone is you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to try and give a summary of the research centre that I work in. And it's a big research centre with many researchers and many projects. So I don't really have time to cover all of them, and I need to find a nice balance between doing my colleagues justice and keeping everybody interested. So wish me luck. The research centre which I work in is at Anglo-Ruskin University in the United Kingdom. This is called the Medical Technology Research Centre, and so to abbreviate, we refer to this as MTRC, which you can see at the top. We're split into a series of groups, and even glancing at the titles, you can see that we cover a very diverse range of research specialisations. Our Atoms group, you can see over on the far left here, very interested in orthopaedic surgery, particularly in surgeries of the hip, including components on robotic surgery. The next group across is the group which I lead, the biomechanics, optics, robotics, imaging, and this is one of the groups which I'll be giving the main emphasis of the presentation on today, because from the initial conversations I've had, I think there are many opportunities for collaborative research in here, and one of my aims is certainly to pique the interest and see if we can establish some strong connections between our respective institutions. We have biomedical engineering, who also have interests in a variety of engineering projects, but also in pedagogical processes and ways to motivate young children into the ways you can get them interested in the various science, technology, engineering, mathematic interests. We have biomedical informatics, who lots of work with machine learning, artificial intelligence, advanced data analysis. Circulatory health tends to do mainly central circulatory health. They're very interested in cardiac surgery. One of the research projects in there was actually looking particularly at development of a new heart valve. And when this was developed, then this has now actually been implemented in, I think, 160 operations now. And so there are 160 people who are alive that wouldn't have been without this newly developed heart valve project. They do lots of work looking at different ways and techniques to measure the different pressures within the heart throughout the cardiac cycle as well, and highly prestigious now group with their outputs. The drug discovery group is doing lots of work, particularly with fibrotic diseases. They have a range of different medications which they're developing for any of the range of fibrotic diseases. So essentially anywhere where there is scarring of tissues within the body, they're looking at ways to either prevent that scarring or minimise the scarring to really help the patients with their quality of life. The molecular diagnostics unit we have is a highly prestigious group. The top name you can see on here, Bustin, was recently named as one of the 0.05 percentile of researchers in their area. His work on PCR is now been cited something like 17,000 times. And his processes on refining the accuracy of the outputs and speeding up continues to innovate. The molecular diagnostics, molecular and developmental biology group, very, very interested in development, looking at micro-CT scans, looking at the ways in which loading affects the development of bones. And so lots of implications for a variety of conditions there. And pharmaceutical research, which is actually led by the director of the Medical Technology Research Centre, Mohammed Najla, continues to innovate in nanotechnology, in precision medicine, and they have developed their own spin-out company looking at the ways you can refine the pharmaceutical development, and they have the strongest links with industry of all of us. I'm very pleased to see Mohammed leading us and looking forward to learning from his guidance about how we can actually develop. We have our own sub-centres that have developed from the overall research centre. One of our most successful was the Oberon project, which was very focused on the finite element analysis of the eye, particularly on the accommodation process. So how does the eye actually focus? How does that change when you look at the length of the muscles within the eye or the angle of the muscles within the eye? And this led to a new doctoral centre coming up with a variety of European collaborators. We had 14 PhD students across 8 countries collaboratively working on addressing this aim. And this particular funding cycle has now come to an end, but there is actually a high chance of extension with new funding applications currently being reviewed. We also have the Centre for Excellence in Robotic Surgery, which Charte has been leading on, and I believe you'll be hearing more about later on. So I will not go into huge detail on this now because you will hear about that later on. But you can see we have almost £1 million of funding here, building on links with Kościele University, Technical University of Warsaw in Poland, and we're establishing more links with hospitals in the UK and looking to see how we can feed those in to our international relationship. Okay, so very exciting areas in there. So hopefully you can see that much of what we do, particularly in our research group, really comes down to measurement, modelling, and then the applied applications of that. And so what I'd like to do is give you some insight into some of the types of projects which we've actually done, and then hopefully that will pique some interest, as I say, and I'll leave my contact details at the end if anyone would be interested in following up. With biomechanics, then many people will instantly think of gait analysis, and this is something that we can actually do in our lab. We have recently a funded project looking at a feasibility of a mobile motion analysis hub. One of the big challenges in the UK is finding enough time to get people to the hospital or arranging the transport for people that have difficulty getting to the hospital, and this is creating huge waiting lists that we're having problems with. And so we funded a study that arranged for a lab to move to a local recreational centre, and we had 111 patients that came there and they had their walking analysed and that data provided to their clinicians, making essentially the hospital go to the patient rather than the patient going to the hospital. And this provided a much more convenient way to actually get that data and reduce the imposition both on the patients and of course on the demands of the logistics at the hospital themselves. We have a PhD student who's looking at a gait rehabilitation process for people with osteoarthritis. So people are having either a total or a partial knee replacement. And then how do we maximise the efficiency of their rehabilitation, because there is still a worrying amount of patients who are having revisions or replacement surgeries. And so we're investigating the ways in which we can minimise the risk of those happening and get people independent as quickly as possible after these very significant surgeries. We're looking at a variety of projects with people with diabetes. I'm sure you're aware one of the potential problems with diabetes is problems with feet. And this is an ongoing area and a very significant cost to the UK. On average, there is between 600 and 900 million pounds per year spent on patients who have problems with diabetic foot condition. And so we're looking at a variety of projects to see how can we actually maximise the information that we have available, or how can we innovate using the technology that we have available to try and minimise the risk of the diabetic foot condition progressing. Some of our projects start quite simple. I was recently having an interesting discussion last night with Arif actually, and I've learned there was quite a few car manufacturers around here. And it reminded me of a project that I arranged for a student when I learnt that one of the criterion which people use to assess risk when they develop cars is something called the head injury criterion. So essentially, I'm sure you're aware that when new cars are developed, then they destroy the cars and they have crash test dummies inside. And they say, what kind of injuries did they actually develop? And one of the equations that's used from the sensors within the crash test dummies is called the head injury criterion. How fast did the head change the rate of movement, and what's the likelihood of risk? It's actually a relatively simple equation, and so people are now trying to translate this into different areas, and I've noticed that this is being used in litigation for sports injuries or for slips, trips or falls. But the issue we have here is that if somebody falls over, it's very unlikely that they've got an accelerometer and a gyroscope strapped to their head at the time. And so my observation was, if we're using a standard CCTV camera, or a standard camera that someone has for a sports game, not an advanced elite sport, average game, what does that mean for the accuracy of the data we're putting into the equation that's developed for a different type of sensor? And so I got out my tools and I built a little wooden frame. I 3D printed a head. I put an inertial motion unit sensor underneath where I have a triaxial axometer, a triaxial gyroscope, and a triaxial magnetometer as my gold standard. And then I placed two video cameras side by side, a fixed focus and an autofocus camera, very typical of standard either CCTV or average cameras that might be used by a person who's just filming their son at a sports game. And I compared the results when we look at the accelerations which are used to calculate the head injury criterion. And lo and behold, even with 50 repetitions to give me a very nice representation of the actual measures that we get, we can see, although we have a relatively consistent spread of results for each measurement, they absolutely don't agree. In other words, if I try and analyse the data of someone falling over on a standard street and I use images from two different shops who have CCTV cameras, I'm going to get completely different values. And this really brings into question the benefit and accuracy of trying to use this equation in litigation, which we've started to observe in the UK. And so we're preparing this for publication now as a warning for people that are trying to apply a technique which was developed for a different tool than that which they're using. Another member of the research group is very interested in completely different lifestyles, looking in sub-Saharan Africa at the way in which people carry heavy loads over very uneven terrain and the impact on osteoarthritis at the neck, and has actually found very high levels of osteoarthritis and spondylitis in the cervical spine, implicated to the different carrying techniques which are adopted in those different areas. You can see the percentages, 48% and 80% of these injuries in over 500 individuals. So this is certainly something which is a lifestyle factor which is causing a risk. And so we're trying to create awareness of this. Moving slightly away from the macro scale, then one of our colleagues has developed a new technique to get single molecule high resolution microscopy. And so essentially here, this is using a high powered laser to increase the actual level of accuracy that you can get from microscopy. And so we've increased the level of accuracy by 15 times. And although there are some similar commercially available setups, the cost of this is 1/10 of that which is actually required if you was to just try and buy the commercial variations. So the ability to view single molecules and protein binding is becoming much more accessible. We're continuing to work looking at the ways in which you can actually increase the resolution and the different types of information that can be processed. While we're looking on the smaller scale, another evolving area that we're looking at is in the assessment of blood flow. With the increased availability of high processing computing, then we're revisiting some of the information which has previously been written off as too basic or not having enough information, no complexity to it. And so we're particularly interested in peripheral blood flow. So you may be familiar with the PPG, photoplethysmography, or perhaps you've seen this as a pulse oximeter, a small LED and sensor that's clipped to a fingertip. And at the moment, it's primarily used to get oxygen saturation. But there's a huge amount of other information that you can get from this. Much of the current research at the moment is looking at, can we get blood glucose, for example, or can we get other measures directly from it? But we've become more interested in what can we infer from the actual waveform itself. So can we link this to central measures? So we've been looking at an equation that was developed, a process that was developed back in 2014 at the University of Greenwich, called the symmetric projection attractor reconstruction, which is a mouthful, and so we often refer to this as the SPA analysis. If you were looking at the history, it was originally called the cardiomorph. I don't know why they changed that, but they've moved across here. And this is very similar to nonlinear dynamics. So anyone who studied chaos theory or any of those variations might be familiar with the initial steps. Take an original waveform, embed that by taking 3 points along the actual trace and moving those, iterating along the whole signal, and then using those 3 variations of the point in time to create an X, a Z, an X, a Y, and a Z data points. So we have 3 columns rather than 1. We plot these against each other in a 3-dimensional plot to get a state space representation. That's equivalent to anything that you would have if you were looking for entropy or Lyapunov exponent. Where the SPA analysis gets different is that there was 3 equations that were developed to change the orientation of which the axis is viewed. So essentially, in this instance, what's happening is, if you'll imagine that rather than looking at this particular plot here, we've changed the orientation, so we're looking from this front corner diagonally through up to the top corner, the opposite side. And when we do that, then we can actually change this to a 2-dimensional plot. And when we look at peripheral blood flow, that plot looks like a triangle. We can change this to a density plot, and then we can start to look at the representation of different situations, different physiological parameters. The original team that developed this have produced a nice table that gives us some indication of the sort of changes that we can get, but it's fairly incomplete. And so we're starting to look at this with different conditions. The first starting point I looked at was with patients who have got kidney disease. And so you may be aware, with kidney disease, you need to have dialysis in advanced cases, of course. And one of the issues with dialysis is that if we're going to continually put a needle regularly into a blood vessel, that blood vessel can easily have problems. It can get damaged, it can deflate. And so because it's a vein and it's got a weaker structure, the way in which clinicians help people to prepare for this regular insertion of a needle into a vein is that they take an artery and a vein and they attach them together, because the blood pressure from the artery is higher pressure. And this in itself, therefore, the higher pressure helps the vein to stay inflated, helps it to stay into a good condition. But if you get that wrong, if you put a little bit too much blood from the artery going into the vein, the hand gets less blood than it would do before, because we've taken the blood supply from the artery that goes to the hand. And so we've been looking at whether we can use this analysis to start to spot differences in the blood flow in the thumb of patients who have fistula to try and detect the changes. So you can see, if we look across the top, then we have left-right comparison. So patient 1, left-right, patient 2, left-right, patient 3, left-right. No problems. Take patients who've got problems, left-right, left-right, left-right. And you can see that we're starting to see some differences. And so we're evolving along now. And in many ways, I look at this, I imagine myself, probably slightly vainly, as one of the early people who were looking at ECG. And when we first had ECG, people said, hey, we've got a load of bumpy lines, and that bump looks different, that one's bigger, and now it's gone smoother, and that bump moved later. And so I'm searching around for these patterns within the data set. We've recently also completed a data set on patients with lupus. And at that point, I realized I wasn't using good scientific process because we're missing some basic information. And so I've gone back and I'm collecting data on perfectly healthy people, but I'm collecting blood pressure and thumbs and toes at the same time as well. So this is an evolving area around. And blood flow is something the group is particularly interested in from a peripheral point. We have another member who's looking at the ability of ultrasound to be used as a diagnostic monitoring tool to try and minimize the risk of amputation. And they have found from an initial literature review that the risk of amputation with monitoring from ultrasound does seem to actually reduce that risk of amputation. And so we started a longitudinal study looking at this, and over the next year we'll be monitoring patients that are having peripheral vascular problems to see if we can actually intervene and reduce the number of patients that are getting amputations. We have another colleague who runs our engineering and robotics lab. See photos from here with a bunch of equipment. To be honest, I don't really understand, but if this is an area you are interested in, then Shabnam will certainly be interested to speak to you, and I can put you in contact in there. But within the group, they have developed a new peripheral blood flow monitoring device. So this is from an Innovate UK, a big funding opportunity available in the UK, which is linked with industry. So they have an industrial partner who's helped them to develop. And you can see that this blood flow is a very simple sensor going onto the surface of the skin. And this in itself is a very valuable tool because ultrasound is a highly skilled process and it is underestimated. If you look at someone that knows what they're doing, they pick up the probe and it looks easy. If you think it's easy, try and do it. Believe me, it is not. A little bit of pressure, a degree or two in one direction, and it all just disappears. It's much more frustrating than it appears when the experts do it. And so the tool in itself is providing an opportunity to make this more accessible, and that's absolutely part of the ethos of what we do. Within that same group, there is also a PhD student who's looking at developing a diabetic foot monitoring device, looking at the pressures in the foot and the blood flow in the foot using actually a different measure in there. But again, linking across that common themes that we've seen from some of the earlier points. And then a very unique project to this particular group is actually the development of a feeding robot to help provide some independence for patients with neurological conditions that can't feed themselves. And so it's just helping to make sure that there is access to people that need that support. So it's another very, very key theme you'll find across the Medical Technology Research Centre. Another project by the same group was actually development of a navigation robot. And so essentially the idea here was this would be a robot that could go into areas that humans couldn't. So it might be a smoke-filled room, or it might be in a room that has high radiation, and navigate its way around, but deal with challenges. And so there's a variety of sensors on here. You can see a LiDAR camera at the top. The Mintai is a depth camera. And it's using this combination of cameras on here to navigate its way around a room. And then using SLAM modeling, okay, that's simultaneous LiDAR and depth camera mapping, to actually produce a map of the room that updates as it finds a new obstacle and works out whether it can move through that obstacle, under that obstacle, if it has to go around that obstacle. Okay. With the use of neural network mapping and deep learning, then the actual recognition and capability of that navigation improved by 62% compared to prior techniques. So yeah, the robotics group is doing a fantastic range and a very wide range of work. So one of the last things I want to talk to you about is one of the things that we do when we're trying to deal with information. Because much of the work which we get can be quite complex, but basic at the same time. This is one of the unique paradoxes I find of working with clinicians, is they'll say to me, oh, I've got this very, very simple thing, or I've got a basic question for you. So, okay. And then they produce me with a big data set of the things that's very difficult to deal with, particularly when it comes in multivariate binary data. So, are these patients taking medications or combinations of medications? Yes, no, wide range. Or these patients might have these symptoms, what kind of clusters of symptoms do we get? And they'll give me 25 signs and symptoms and a table that says yes, no. And how do you deal with that? And so we've been embracing network analysis for this. So if you're not familiar, this is what's called a bipartite plot. This is probably one of the most basic types of network analysis. So here we have 25 patients and a range of medications that they might be taking and a map between them. And so straight away, we can follow the lines and we can see that HCQ or NNF have got much higher levels of patient use or prescription to patients than any of the other medications. So very, very quick way to visualize, although the bipartite plot is slightly limited. And so the last case that I want to actually give you is an example from a fast-track giant cell arteritis clinic. Okay, so this is a condition that affects the eyes, blood flow going to the eyes, and one of the potential symptoms or one of the potential outcomes is sight loss. And obviously this is devastating. Nobody wants to lose the ability to see. And so we got some data from the fast-track clinic at Southend Hospital. This is part of the trust that's closest to the university where Charter and I are based. And we were provided with anonymised data on 149 patients, 27 of whom had sight loss. We were given a lot of information, okay? Sex, gender, a range of different signs and symptoms. And with the exception of age, everything else in this was binary data. So present or absent, male or female, apart from CRP, sorry. That was continuous data, but it turned out that it really gave us very little useful information, and so that ended up being discluded. First thing, obviously, let's stick with the basics. Let's plot this as a bar chart. Let's look for differences, and many of these look fairly similar. You might be drawn to something like hypertension and go, well, they look a little bit different. Or visual symptoms, they look a little bit different. But given that we were asked to investigate patients who had sight loss, then I wasn't particularly surprised to find out that visual symptoms were different within the groups. But what I wanted to find out is, what are the differences between the patients who present? So the first thing we had to do was deal with any missing data. Okay, we had around about 40 to 50 points, but across 23 included variables and 150 patients, that's not a huge amount. And so I used the mice algorithm, okay, to replace that. If you know that, great. If you don't, it's just a way of repeatedly looking at the combinations of data and saying, what would the most likely answer have been in that slot that's missing? I then use a particular type of network analysis called an Eisenfit model, which essentially uses logistic regression on this and looks at the combinations of patterns of symptoms, and then it weights them. And so if there is a very frequent occurrence of two symptoms together, it's included. If there's a very rare occurrence, it's not included. And the final plot that we end up is like this. And I find this much more useful than the bipartite plot, because I can see straight away that if I have any green line, or referred to as edges in network analysis, there's a positive connection. Any red lines, there's negative. So if people have polymyalgia rheumatica, they're very unlikely to get sight loss. Useful straight away for the clinicians, and this aligns with the observations they had. The width of the actual edges indicates strong connection. So if people have shoulder pain, they're very likely to have morning stiffness. Or if people have weight loss, they're also very likely to have fatigue. And then the clustering, which in network analysis is referred to as community detection, are the symptoms that most closely align together. And so within the giant cell fast track clinic, we can now say to clinicians, from your data, these are the symptoms that are most likely to come together. And now we're looking at the ways that the clinicians can then say, well, firstly, yes, that makes sense, because you have to confirm with experts. And then how can they use that to influence their own treatment patterns? That's a lot to cover, and it's an absolute whirlwind tour, so thank you for staying with me from this. And I would just like to finish by saying we are very keen to establish collaborations. If you've seen anything in there that's interesting to you, then please email me, and I'll either speak to you about it or I'll put you in contact with the researcher who's leading on those areas, and we're very, very keen to speak to you. Thank you very much.
For his presentation. Is there any question? Sorusu olan var mı? Ben tercüme de edebilirim isterseniz. Biyomedikalden de arkadaşlarımız var. Buradan görüyorum. Sorusu olanlar var mı?
Do you have open data sets for the ones that you collected during your clinical collaborations?
At the moment, no. But I can speak to the clinicians to see if they will be open to that.
Because if it anonymous data, I think it can be
I agree with the ethos, but I always have to lead with, I have to refer back to the clinicians that provide the data because they're the data controllers, not me.
yeah, definitely. And I was also wondering what kind of sensors or methods do you use for measuring head injury? Because there wasn't any typical details about the work here.
Because this was an experimental simulation, then it was just the risk of injury, not the actual occurrence of injury that was assessed. Okay, so at the moment it is just based on the accelerations and the impact on the prediction equation.
And does it include machine learning methods?
Not yet, but that is something which I have been thinking because it would be very useful if different cameras had there was a way of predicting what the accurate head injury criteria would be. So you've certainly spotted the future direction, which I agree with.
Yeah, and also I was wondering,
Carry on.
for network analysis, for biparticle plots, you used only single layer. And I was wondering why didn't you use multiple layers for your projects? Because it's really, hires the accuracy of the network layer.
Yeah, so the multiple layers obviously is moving towards a neural network sort of approach. Whereas what the particular clinicians were asking me about for that one was the description in here. They wanted a descriptive statistics analysis, but an easy visualization with it.
Well, if it's used with application process layer, and user website for it, it would be accountable for the clinicians as well.
Interesting. Email me, let's discuss it further. Fantastic.
Thank you for your answers and for your presentation.
Oh, thanks for some great questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Dene teşekkür ediyoruz konuşması için. Tabii kongrelerin May I continue with your permission in Turkish? Thank you. Şimdi bu kongrelerin de bir diğer özelliği de aslında insanları ciddi manada az önce de konuşmadaki birbirine bağlıyor olması. Tabii bizlere çeşitli fırsatlar da sunuyor. Mesela Den'le birlikte Çağatay bizim doktor öğrencimizdi, bitirdi. Şimdi İngiltere'de orada birlikte çalışıyorlar. Artı Anglia-Ruskin Üniversitesi ile birlikte biz başka türlü imkanlara da bir araya girmeye başladık. Dün rektör hocamızla da bir toplantı yaptık. Hani orayla neler yapabiliriz de. Çünkü bizim de yetkin olduğumuz kısımlar var. Onların da yetkin olduğu kısımlar var. Bunları bir araya getirip işte sizin gibi araştırmacıları oraya ilave etmemiz. Aslında bu sempozyum ve kongrelerin en önemli amaçlarından bir tanesi de bu. Dolayısıyla biz dünden de detaylı bir şekilde konuştuk aslında. Neler de yapabiliriz? Başka konular da var. Az önce mesela senin sormuş olduğun konuda makine öğrenmesi ve yapay zeka ile ilgili kısımlarda da çalışma yapmak istiyorlar. Sonlu elemanlar kısmı var. Mühendislik kısmında tabii ki biraz ağırlıklı olarak yöneliyor çünkü üniversite. Her ne kadar kendisi tıp fakültesinde öğretim elemanı olarak ve biyomedikal, daha doğrusu biyomekanik laboratuvarının başında az önce bir tabloda zaten bahsetti. Anglia-Ruskin Üniversitesi'nde departmanlar bizdekinden biraz daha farklı şekilde çalışıyor. Oradaki kısmın başındaki kişi. Dolayısıyla orayı da ikame ettiği, yönettiği için de bazı talepleri de var. Hani biz bunları nasıl karşılayabiliriz diye. İşte buradaki buluşmalar buna ciddi manada fırsat sunmuş oluyor. Ben izin verirseniz şimdi bir diğer hocamız var. Profesör Luis Rezoria from Portugal. Professor Rezoria, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? We have some problem. Pardon me. Okay. Okay. Yes. Konuşmanın başında söylediğim gibi şimdi görüşme yapacağımız, daha doğrusu şu andaki sırada konuşacak olan hocamız Profesör Luis Manuel Ferreira Rosario. Portekiz'de Coimbra Mühendislik Enstitüsü'nde az önce de ifade ettiğim gibi benim de beraber çalıştığımız hocalardan bir tanesi. Yes, Professor Rosario, this is your site.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay.
So, good evening, good morning. You hear me?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, good evening. Just a few words. A special greeting from Portugal to all friends present in the wonderful Turkey. Allow me to express my greetings first to the magnificent director of the University of Açılış, Professor Nusa Ferrin, present institutions. Greetings from the President of Coimbra Polytechnic University. My greetings to Professor Osmond, President of Imascon, and my greetings to my colleague and special friend, Professor Arif, as also my greetings to my friend, Professor Mustafa. I extend this greeting to all friends of the wonderful Kocaeli University, and I'm very, very sorry for being unable to be there in person. Thanks for this invitation. It is a pleasure to be part of Imascon. My greetings to colleague Professor Dr. Dan Robbins from Anglia Ruskin University, extending to all the colleagues from the Anglia Ruskin University, special to Shatai. This connection between Coimbra Polytechnic University and Kocaeli University is making its history and road. There is an express intent to continue and develop joint working projects of common interest involving research activities and pedagogical components with innovative experiences and projects, particularly involving our students from all degrees of education. Many ideas can and will unite us, and we will likely carry out and get joint projects soon, particularly in the biomedical domain. Also, our idea is to apply for European projects. So let's keep in touch, let's keep connected. Congratulations on another Imascon, where will surely be a successful sharing moment. Thank you very much. Teşekkürler.
Yes, this is our pleasure to see you here again. Thank you so much. Şimdi şunu da ifade etmiş olayım. Hocamızın saat 15'te de bir paralel oturumu olacak. Luis Hoca'nın. Orada doktora öğrencileriyle birlikte katılacak. Ben onu da ifade etmiş olayım. Kendi sunumunu da aslında oraya da ayırmak istedi. Biraz bir kısmı da var. Kendi öğrencileri de var. Öğrenciler derken hepsi doktora öğrencileri. Bizim de beraber çalıştığımız bir grup da var içlerinde. 15'teki o bizim Imascon'un kısmında yer alan, yani akış programının içinde yer alan ilgi gösterirseniz, o kısma da katılırsanız memnun olurum. Artı sorularınız olursa da cevaplamaktan çok memnunum diyen öğrenciler de vardı içinde ve bir sunum içeriğinde de özellikle Türkiye'dekilerle birlikte sunmak istiyorum diye katılan oldu. Bu bizi açıkçası çok memnun etti. Başka bir yerde de bir sempozyum varmış ama bizi tercih ettiğinde tabii kendisiyle bunu çok detaylı konuşmadık. Bir öğrencisi beni aradığında söyledi. Ben dedi sizle sunmak istiyorum. Hani böyle nasıl destek olursunuz diye. Tamam dedik, aynı oturuma aynı şekilde ekleyelim. Ya bu da açıkçası başka bir ülke yerine bizi tercih etmiş olmaları bizi de memnun etti. Bunun için işte hocayla da daha sonra teşekkür edeceğiz açıkçası. Tabii sunum esnasında kendisi de söylemek istedi bunu. O yüzden ben kendisine de ifade etmedim. Sunum esnasında söyleyecek. Niye burayı tercih ettiğini. Bizim açımızdan da tabii iyi olan bir durum açıkçası. Biz demek ki nitelikli bir şekilde sürdürebiliyor olacağız. Ben şimdi izninizle açılış oturumunu kapatmak istiyorum. İnşallah bir sonrakini online'ları kalabalık olarak değil de yüz yüzeleri kalabalık olarak yapma gayreti içinde oluruz. Ve hep birlikte, çünkü az önce de ifade ettiğimiz gibi 900'ün üzerinde katılımcısı olan bir kongrede birebir ilişkileri çok daha hızlıca kurabilmek bizim açımızdan daha büyük fırsatlar sunacaktır. Az önce Dr. Dan Robbins'in dediği gibi biz işbirliklerine ciddi manada açığız. Hatta hiç çekinmeden bizle de irtibat kurabilirsiniz dedi. Bunları yüz yüze daha sayısını da arttırarak siz de gittiğiniz yerlerde ve diğer arkadaşlarınızla da biz online değil yüz yüze katılmaya gayret edelim derseniz biz açıkçası çok daha fazla memnun oluruz. Ben bundan dolayı da katıldığınız için ayrıca çok teşekkür ederim. İnşallah kongremiz bu işbirliklerine, sizin alanınızdaki çalışmalarınıza da bir nebze daha ileri seviyede katkı verecek bir sonuçla da sonuçlanmış olur. Hepimiz açısından da teşekkür ediyorum. Thank you so much, Professor. We will end this session. We will meet at 3 p.m. session. Okay? See you. Say hi to everybody. Evet. Artık ufak bir serbestliğimiz var. Bundan sonra normal akışımıza göre devam edeceğiz. Teşekkürler.